so excited to be here today with Nikki May and Laura Lee Griffin of the Startist Society. I am excited to talk to these girls because we chatted on their podcast, the Startist Society. And first of all, they interviewed me, so I didn't get to ask them all the burning questions that I had for them. But also, I realized, I knew already from listening to the podcast, we have so much in common with our ethos about moving forward and like getting rid of procrastination and all that kind of stuff. So I'm excited to dig in on those subjects with them as well. So welcome, guys.
Thank you. We're so excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes. And this is a twofer, as you guys can see, because Nikki and Laura are currently taking a retreat together, and I love that. So I'm so excited that it is lined up and we get to see both of them on screen at the same time.
Well, we're excited about that too, because we usually podcast from different states. So being in the same room together is good.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right. So why don't you guys, get started by just introducing yourselves and a little background on how you got into, getting started in the art business and that kind of stuff. Laura, you want to start?
Ooh, the pressure.
Go for it.
Well, I'm Laura Lee Griffin, and I started, I've always been a maker my entire life, but I started out largely in music. And then I got hooked into sort of the craft world first, actually, and into stamping and things like that. And I was spending so much money doing that. I was like, I actually need to make a little money because it's all going one direction out the door. So I actually became a designer for craft publications, as well as the Hero Arts rubber stamp company. I worked for Polyform, which is a polymer clay company, creating designs for the craft industry and creating videos for their websites and different things like that. So that was my start in it was sort of the crafty world. And then that transitioned into Copic markers, because I was using Copic markers to color in all the stamped images. And so I ended up becoming a teacher for Copic markers. I got certified. I've taught over 100 live workshops on how to color. So I've learned so much about color and workshops and teaching. And then that spread into, I've done encaustic wax, I've done mixed media, I've done watercolor. So I dabble in a little bit of everything. And now I'm really passionate about my iPad. So doing that kind of art. So I think that's sort of my background, came sort of from the crafting world, moved into the art world and the design world. And that's actually how I met Nikki, was through the design world, because we were in Bonnie Christine's immersion together, and we were in an accountability group. And so that's sort of how we met. And we'll tell more about that story later. Yeah. But Nikki, why don't you tell a little bit about your background?
So I think I came out of the womb with a pencil drawing. I've just been drawing my entire life, and I don't think I ever made an actual decision to become an artist. I just was always drawing. And I like to tell a story. My sister and I started gymnastics classes and ceramics classes at the same time when we were like, I don't know, 5 and 7 or something like that. And she immediately took to the gymnastics and has been doing that her whole life. And I immediately took to ceramics. And although I don't do ceramics, but we just went those separate ways, one towards physical stuff, one towards creative stuff. And so I never thought about doing anything else. So I was the kid when I was a senior in high school who skipped all her classes to go paint the mural in the hall. And I went to art school. I studied drawing and painting in undergrad and fiber arts in grad school. I went to University of Georgia for undergrad and Savannah College of Art and Design for grad school. And then I got sidetracked and ended up in an accidental career with IBM. Actually, my first job out of grad school was working for an apparel company. So I was actually doing licensed designs 25 years ago, I did National Audubon Society, Nature Conservancy, and Ducks Unlimited t-shirt designs. But then I ended up starting to list. I taught myself enough web design to put my portfolio out there. And so I started listing HTML as a skill alongside all my illustration and design stuff. And I got contacted by a contractor placing for a 30-day temp job with IBM, and that ended up being a 10-year career. So I got sidetracked and I stopped doing my own art when I was working for IBM because I was working 80-hour weeks.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it's only in the last 10 years or so that, I mean, that sounds like a lot to a lot of people who are just getting started. I'm a lot older, so 10 years is not that long in my life. But yeah, so now I'm back to it, and I've found a balance between still doing the web design stuff just for myself instead of for IBM and my own clients, and doing the art.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. So interesting. I love these backgrounds. Laura, like I am on the kind of the opposite, because I obviously have been doing design for most of my career, my whole career. And I don't get into that craft stuff too much. And then someone told me that they were like, this was like a potential new client who ended up being a client a couple of years ago. And she was like, have you ever done, artwork for stamps? You would be great at that. And I was like, no, I never have. That sounds really awesome. Not knowing really anything about it. And then, like literally it was definitely kismet. I always tell this story because like that day, or maybe the next day, one of my, art friends was like, hey, do you have like extra room in your client schedule? Cause I work with a stamp company and they're looking for new illustrators. And so I started working with, and they happen to be a stamp company that's based in Raleigh, North Carolina, which is where I am. Wow. So it was like, perfect. Oh my gosh. So now I've been working for 2 or 3 years with Catherine Pooler. And so they do the most amazing, like I just draw the stuff, and they do the most amazing things, like making these cool cards, and like me just trying to show off my designs by like doing a few stamps and like making a nice picture is like the most pathetic thing comparatively, because there's so much of an art to it that I don't get yet,
You need to send the stamps to me and then I'll make the samples for you.
Exactly. That's what I need to do. So they have that. That's what Catherine Pooler does. They send it out to their like ambassadors or whatever, and they get back these incredible cards. And so I was just visiting their clubhouse. They call it the clubhouse, their office, a couple of weeks ago, and they gave me a bunch of samples of my stuff. And now I got because they gave me all the dies too. So I got like a little die machine. So now I think I'm gonna become a stamp impresario or something. I don't know. We'll see.
Nice.
I love that.
That's so interesting that you came from the opposite end. But yeah, I mean, there's such an art to doing that kind of stuff. So it's really awesome.
And there's also a whole world of digital stamps. So I don't know how you are, if you're aware of that, where people sell their illustrated images online as digital downloads, and then people download them and print them on their own computer and then color them and cut them out and put them on cards.
Okay.
That's another avenue for you that you could look into.
I need to do that too.
Like, do they use it like SVG, like the whole like Cricut
PNG
silhouette?
You just save it as PNG files with transparent backgrounds, and then people can resize them. You just do them in a decent size, and people they can print them from almost any program, even Word, Microsoft Word.
Yeah, they're not turning them into physical stamps. They're just printing the image and coloring them.
Yep.
Interesting.
Or doing it on their iPad.
You can check out my website. I've got them.
All right. I'm interested. Yeah, I have to check that out. All right. Well, I have like a jillion questions, so we'll move on. But
yeah, let's go.
So all right. So Nikki came from IBM, and Laura came from sort of working through different crafting things. And so I'm curious how your past professional creative experiences have served you now that you're both working as independent. No, one of you has a full-time job. Laura has a full-time job.
I do. So I didn't mention this in my background, but I'm actually very dual brained, right, left brain. So I've always had this creative aspect in this business that I've had doing design work, doing illustration, doing painting and teaching. And on the other side, I crunch numbers for a living. So I am
spreadsheet queen.
I am the Excel queen. I do huge complex models and formulas, and like most artists cringe when they hear the word Excel, and I get giddy inside. That's just, I am a total geek. I'm a total geek.
Well, I'm a total geek. We're both total geeks, just in different ways.
Yeah, that's okay. I love it. So but you still have a side hustle of art, and not hustle, but whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
side business,
absolutely.
Where you're growing your art. And Nikki, you work full-time as an artist and web designer. Is that?
Yes. So, I mean, I still kind of consider it as if I have two full-time jobs, because I do websites and other graphic design for clients. And that's pretty much a full-time job. And then I also do my own art and illustration.
And a podcast.
And
a
podcast,
you guys are
it's almost another full-time job.
Yeah.
So we each kind of have 3 full-time jobs.
Yeah, basically.
So you guys are both really chill. And
Yeah, we're so relaxed.
How are the experiences that you're having in your non-art jobs helping you or serving you as you build your creative jobs?
Well,
does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think a lot of artists and designers are intimidated by the more business side, the more tech side. And I'd say that Laura and I both have a lot of experience with that.
Yes.
So there are a lot of things that are not as intimidating maybe for us, which is one of the reasons that we're offering all this help to people. But the fact that I can design a website and build it in my sleep definitely helps. And I would also say, just working in the corporate world. So I worked for IBM for 10 years. And before that, I was terrified of any kind of public speaking. But once you present your design to the New York Times, you're kind of not intimidated anymore.
No, totally.
So I think that's the biggest thing. The day-to-day work is really different, but a lot of the mindset and confidence that you need to put yourself out there.
Yes.
I think our day jobs probably helps a lot with that.
Yeah. And it's learning, like Nikki said, the business side of things, learning to communicate with people. Like if you're an artist and you want to pitch your work or things like that, you want to be a professional. And so having some of those business skills, I think really helps in that way. If you have a lot of
Some
experience.
of us are more professional than others.
That's true.
Go ahead. Some of us interrupt more too.
So, so I think that that's huge, is having, the communication skills, understanding numbers, being able to understand, maybe financially what makes sense, where to invest, money in something. And also, being able to learn from our mistakes too, as we make them sometimes, and realize that's just all part of business, right? So I think in general, that's been great. And then individually, we can talk about this a little more, but we have very complementary skills.
Yeah.
So the fact that we found each other and we're co-hosts of a podcast, we can divide the responsibilities in such a way that makes things so much easier than if we were doing it on our own. If we were doing it on our own, it probably wouldn't exist.
No, if I was trying to podcast on my own, it would never have happened. I would have been in the planning stages and designing the branding and the website forever and never actually launching a podcast.
Yeah.
And you might still be just tweaking the audio.
Yeah.
I actually 6 years ago, Elizabeth, I created a little podcast intro. Like I actually created the whole intro for a podcast and then just never did anything with it. So I probably would still be tweaking the intro.
And now you guys have a podcast called Startist Society, which the whole thing is like, get started, stop procrastinating, move forward. I love this. And I love what you're like, those skills that you have found in the corporate world you're so right, because I think that, creatives just want to be in their little creative hole, and you have to get yourself out there. That's, what I talk about in Start Your Surface Pattern business. I'm talking about Start Your Surface Pattern business, it's like, the things that I'm talking about are not like draw more. The things I'm talking about are get your website. Are you on Instagram yet? You better, take out all your dog pictures. It's time to focus. Like, so
I'm not taking my dog pictures out.
Take them out. You're never going to be a success. No, just joking. But you know what I mean? Just like the idea of focusing and getting yourself out there. And that is a thing that is seriously lacking.
And it's uncomfortable, right? Like like those first steps, especially if it's an area of like business, the business side of things, that it's intimidating sometimes. And you're like, I don't even know how to do this. I don't know how to move forward. Mm-hmm. And that's a large reason why we started the podcast, is that we've been there and recently been there. And still are there.
We're still there. I mean, the way we started, it was last fall, not this past fall, but the fall before. We were sitting at brunch, in Dallas.
Yes.
And so she's the planner, and I'm the impulsive one, in case you know.
Love it.
And I was like, we were so we've been in this accountability. At that time, we'd been in it for not quite a year.
Yeah, the accountability group. Yeah.
And but then we met in person, and we were having the same conversations at brunch that we were having on our accountability calls. And I was like, this should be a podcast. We should do a podcast. And then Laura was like, oh my God, I already have an intro.
I love it. So you guys were already working together in the form of an accountability group. So I'm assuming there was a couple other people in the group as well.
Yes.
But you had been meeting for over a year, and like once a month, every couple weeks?
Once a week. We're the Thursday girls.
We're the Thursday girls.
I love it. And so that's how you guys got to know each other and your goals and all that kind of stuff. And then you started talking about business a little bit more and how to move your businesses forward. And that's what kind of sparked it. Is that?
Yeah, because we were meeting once a week, and we would talk about, we would say what we were going to work on for the next week. And we would talk about how that went, if we did anything or didn't do anything, or what wins we had and what struggles we had. And it's with three other women who are all in Canada.
Sure.
We randomly got put together because we were all in the same time zone, I think.
We're not in the same time zone. Well, I don't know how that worked.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we'd been having these conversations for almost a year, and when we were sitting together having them in person, and we clicked and just thought,
let's do it.
Let's do it. I love that.
And we immediately got to work doing all of the research.
All of the things, which we're really good at research, like probably,
yes.
Most of the people watching this are really good at research, right?
Well, seriously, if we didn't have each other, we could easily still be in the research phase.
Exactly. Yeah.
But pushing to implementation, and just for us, it's taking that one next step.
Mm-hmm.
It's just figuring out what's the one next thing. We don't have to, have the brilliant vision of, what that's going to look like down the road, all perfectly solved, right?
But it's really easy to get stuck in that place of, I can't start until I have everything figured out. Yes. And if you do that, if you let yourself do that, you will never accomplish anything. You'll just be researching forever. So it's all about just getting started. Which is where the name came from.
That is so perfect. I love it. I'm obsessed with this messaging, obviously. This resonates, not just because we have the same ethos, but it also resonates because, as I was telling you before we started recording, my biz bestie, Stephanie Pfizer Coleman, and I are actually going to be getting together next week in person. And honestly, it's the first time. We've been like friends for like 5 years online and we've never met in real life.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
yeah.
That is so fun to finally meet somebody you've
I
known
know, I'm
online
super
forever.
excited, and like we talk all the time. So it's like, we know each other, but also we talk mostly about business. So it's so interesting. We'll see how it goes.
Awesome.
I'm thinking it will go well, but you never
Did you,
know.
yeah.
are you getting like an Airbnb or something?
Yeah, exactly. We're
Yeah,
getting
that's what we did.
It's gonna be fun.
Yeah,
But Stephanie
because
is definitely the planner. She is like super methodical, and she just like has all these, she like knows what's happening in 2027. And
my
it all
gosh.
sounds wonderful. Not really, but it all sounds so wonderful and like organized, and it makes me feel like I'm like fly off the handle. Anything I think of, we're just gonna do it and whatever. So
That's me.
I might be the Nikki.
Yes,
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
And
she's
so
the
I
Laura
feel
in the
like
relationship.
Yes.
I feel like almost like, oh, you know, it takes me down a notch of like, am I getting too shiny object syndrome or just like going after nothing? But that's okay. That's like my strength. Now I've started to realize that's my strength, that's her strength, and there's benefits in both of them. And the benefit for me and my strength is me flying off the handle, or whatever I want to call it in any sort of negative way, is really me getting started and trying stuff. And that is obviously great. So obviously great. Everyone knows.
And you don't know if it's going to be good, if it's going to work, if you're going to like it until you try it. So
exactly. Yes,
yeah,
totally. So that sounds like you guys are right on the same page with that. I love that. So you have, besides the podcast, you also have a Facebook community as well. And now talk to me about how you guys work together on this podcast, maybe more about the complementary skill set and stuff like that, and sort of how that differs from what you do when you're working independently.
Okay. So it was really easy for us to decide who's going to do what, because Laura's background, she's got all this experience with music and recording music. So she's done all the audio editing before.
I've been singing since before I could speak, and playing piano since I was 3.
And her voice is beautiful.
So I actually have a whole kind of hidden music section on my website, but yeah. So for me, like recording music, I've had a recording studio in my house for 20 years. So
wow.
Yeah, and I've been doing branding and design and web design for 20, 30, 80 years. I mean, I've been designing websites since there was a web to design on. So, I mean, it was a natural fit for me to do the branding and the website.
Yeah.
And then the other stuff, we just kind of worked out, you know, trying to divide based on our skill set and the amount of time things take. So since the audio editing is such a time and labor intensive thing, and once I had the branding and website built, I don't have to redo that every week. So I do the transcripts and show notes and the like set up the social media planning and posting. And we do planning we plan everything together.
Yeah, we plan it together. So I do all of the audio and the audio editing, and then we both kind of do the Facebook group together.
And you do all the like uploading to Libsyn.
Oh yeah, I upload everything to the syndication, so that all gets out there. But
and then the Facebook group, we wanted to grow a community. We wanted a place where we could get a little deeper with people who are listening and answer their questions and hear what they wanted to know more of. So we both go into the Facebook community and chat with people, and we really need to do that a little bit more.
Yeah. Again, it's all
we're learning. We've never run our own community. Well, actually, that's not true. You have Facebook groups around your courses.
Yeah, I have around the Copic Zoom workshops that I've done. But yeah, it definitely is something that's a learning experience with community. But what we've realized is community is what made us start.
Yes.
So if we were in complete isolation, like Nikki said, we would probably still be in the planning mode. So just because you don't have somebody maybe in your life right now that's this perfect complementary partner, or you know, even if you want to do a podcast, for example, yourself, or start a surface design pattern business, you're able to, you're going to be able to do that by having a community around you of like-minded people. And a lot of that is through, for example, your course, Elizabeth, you know, having where people can meet in your Facebook group or find partners that that help kind of helps spur you on to take that next step. And that's the great thing about community. So we're wanting to foster the same thing around art businesses because of all those intimidating steps that people don't know what's that next step to take. And, you know, we're not 10 years down the road on all of those things. We might be, you know, a few months or 1 year ahead. And so we've been there very recently or are in that process.
Yeah. In fact, that's what we think is one of our strengths, as why we're doing, I mean, as well as we are. I'm not going to say we're, you know, huge, but we're growing and doing pretty well. And what we hear from people is that we're very relatable. So I think a lot of people who have podcasts and communities and courses, they're so far above where most people are, that it's intimidating and they don't feel that they can relate. So we feel like we hear all the time from the people in our community and from our reviews on the podcast and emails that we get, that people feel like they're just sitting in the studio with us when they listen to us. We're super relatable because we're not, you know, we're fumbling along our path the same way that you are. We're just doing it publicly.
I love that. That's awesome. The community thing is so important. I totally agree. It's finding that connection, and it can be really hard, but the benefits of community have just like, you know, I have a module on it in Start Your Surface Pattern Business about connection, because like I've gotten like, it was a friend who someone who was my accountability partner who said, hey, they're looking for illustrators at Catherine Pooler. And now I've been working with Catherine Pooler for this. That's a client that I've worked with for 3 years, and we have a great relationship. That was an accountability partner who put me onto that job, you know, and I've had many examples of that in my career where people have referred me to things, not because they had hired me for something previous, but because we were friends and they knew that I could do it, you know, and then all the benefits that I've gotten from having the biz bestie and being able to bounce ideas off of her and all that stuff. And so it can be hard to make those connections at first, but it's worth it to put yourself out there a little bit and to make the effort, because it, you know, not like you're getting into a relationship just to like, hopefully get client work someday or something like that. But like the rewards are so rich. Right. So I love that you guys have that.
Well, the other thing I wanted to mention is that both of us, before we met each other in the accountability group, had been in multiple accountability groups that just fizzled.
I know. And that's the thing. It's really chemistry, right?
Yeah. And we were really lucky that like there's 5 of us in ours, and we've all just really connected well. And I've never had that happen before. And in fact, so we're working together, but there's 2 other people in our group that are also working together, because one of them designs pattern or fabric collections and quilt patterns, and but she isn't a graphic designer, so she hired one of the other women in the group to do the design for her patterns, and so they're working together all the time. So it's just great opportunities all around.
Yeah. And it really is, it can be luck, you know, it is chemistry and kind of luck, because I've had the same situation, like even in Start Your Surface Pattern Business, you know, I encourage everyone to try to get to know each other. And there is a little bit of difference of how I ran the course in 2020 versus 2021, because 2020 was 2 very set cohorts. But the first cohort is still on an Instagram chat, like group chat basically, and still goes back and forth with each other. And this is over like 1.5 years, and they still support each other. I'm on the chat too. And like, they still ask each other questions and stuff. The second group just didn't gel in that same way, you know? And so you just don't know what's gonna, it's like you have to really put the effort forward. It's just like making any kind of new friend. It's like, you have to really be willing, and it's easy to say like, oh, I can't make accountability today. I can't, or I can't do this. But like, especially in the case of accountability versus just like any sort of more general like meetups, you need to be accountable to actually show up and do it, because otherwise it falls apart,
Well, and sometimes what we'll do, because we are all very busy, is we'll connect to our Zoom meeting and still just work on the things we have to work on, but sometimes it's almost just a co-working thing. So you're still connecting, even if you're not, 100% in the accountability group. And I think that's helped us stay together.
Yeah.
Pretty well. That. Yeah. And then also I want to say to people who have tried groups before, don't let one group you've been in that didn't didn't gel, stop you from trying again, because I've been in a bunch of them that just never went anywhere, and then this one just was great.
So and you found someone who found each other. Oh yes. So no, I love that. That's important. So next question related to the podcast and your own businesses is, do you find that the podcast sort of feeds your business in any way, or are they really pretty independent?
I think in some ways it has. And again, this is where we're still learning. So there's a couple aspects to this. Is one, for me, for example, I'm a Skillshare teacher now. So in the last year, I've taught a couple of Skillshare classes. So I think that that's great that people can become aware of that through the podcast as well. And aside from that, I know on your side with web and branding design and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, I've actually gotten a little bit of design work from people who listen and have gotten to know me. So I've, gotten a logo design job, and not a website yet, but talking to people about it. And also just, I've sold products to people in the group. I mean, that's selling our products to our listeners is not our main goal.
But of course.
It's a nice little side benefit. And, but I've also gotten some referrals. So people who listen to us who are in our Facebook group are recommending me to other people who are looking for design work. So, that's definitely, yeah.
I mean, I think it's the point of, what would you guys say, before I like put words in your mouth, what would you guys say is sort of like the reason that you started, just the reason that you started the podcast? What would you guys say is that?
We started off really wanting to be accountable to each other and accountable to others. And by publicly announcing on a broadcast, that did that, and also to create community. But a lot of it is when, we wish that podcast existed when we were in those stages. We wish somebody had those conversations with us and provided the knowledge that we had gained. And so we wanted to make that accessible to other people who were just starting out, to have all of that information and make it just a little bit less intimidating than it was when we were kind of going through it.
Right. So we're having these conversations anyway about getting started and what we're working on. And yes, one of the very biggest reasons was to be accountable to each other. And we were like, but this is such good stuff we're figuring out, we should share it and help other people, not struggle quite as much. And we both, between our different skills, we have a lot to share with people.
Yeah, you definitely do. That's all right. I love that. I have been trying to think of, like, I've been sort of circling around why I teach or
why do you do your YouTube interviews?
My YouTube and my interviews and all that kind of stuff. I've been trying to circle around, and I have different answers when I think of it at different times. But the YouTube interviews is, I guess, a little bit different. The YouTube interviews is, I'm just genuinely curious about how, because there's so many ways to run your business, and I'm just like, I want to know all of them. It's so fascinating. It's just a very interesting topic to me. And then I know that can be helpful to other people. Obviously, some of the, advice that we give hopefully is helping people. But around like the tutorials and teaching stuff that I do, I've realized recently that I hate when people are stuck when they don't need to be stuck. Like when you're just in the same place treading water forever, when I can clearly see how you can move forward, it's like, come on, just do the thing.
And when you share with somebody who feels stuck, what you suggest what a next step might be, and their eyes light up, you're like, why didn't I think of that?
It's not that hard.
So that's amazing.
Yes, that's where I am, like, it's kind of I don't know if it's coming at it from like the back end, because I feel like what maybe the more flowery way of saying it would be like, I love helping people move forward, but I'm saying I hate seeing people be stuck. So it's like, but that's really the truth there,
And for me, I go to that place of overthinking. I overthink everything. Nikki has to try to help me with that, but
we were supposed to have our little signs. I just bought her like those little desk signs.
Oh yeah.
Just bought her one yesterday that says, what? Let me overthink that.
I might have to go grab that actually.
Do it. We
go grab them both. Oh my God. Yeah, it's hilarious.
I love it.
Bring them over here. So we'll show you the one that,
this is my sign. I don't know if it's backwards on the screen.
No, it's right. Let me overthink that. Yep.
And here's mine.
All right. I'm actually not funny. I'm just mean and people think. That's good. Yeah. Both of those really resonate with me.
we really need to have that.
Yes, that is. I love that. That's so perfect. Oh my God, I'm dying.
They're both actually very true.
They're very accurate. Yeah.
I'm just mean.
I've been trying to curb it. That is my natural inclination as well. I'm trying to be a little bit more positive.
Elizabeth, why fight your nature?
I know. It's I don't know, because I think as I get older, I realize I don't know, I'm getting more empathetic as I get older. I used to be like so judgy and such like but now I'm like, everyone's going through their own stuff. Like, let me not just assume and be like, what the hell are they doing? Whatever, like let them live their lives, So
for
now
me,
that I'm less judgy, it's a little bit harder. And also since I do, not like I have a huge platform or anything, but since I'm usually, saying things in public, it's not that I'm like, I mean, if I really feel something, I'm going to tell, I'm always honest. I'm not like I do not want to sugarcoat anything ever. So
that's one of the things we really like about you.
We actually
Thank you.
You tell it like
we were talking about that in the car yesterday.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely don't want to sugarcoat anything. So if you catch me doing that, stop me. But I also have to, like being in the sort of wider internet world has shown me that, like my point of view is only my point of view. And I don't have all the answers. So me being like super judgy about something or being like, this is the only way it is like, that's irrelevant because it's simply not true. Like it's all from my perspective and my point of view and my experience and my whatever. And I'm not trying to, I've heard people say that like, that's a little bit of a form of like imposter syndrome of saying like, if you have to qualify everything with like, in my opinion, because you're not like confident enough to say, this is the thing. But I mean, it's just as I've gotten older, just realizing like there's so many different experiences. And, when we talk about the idea of like privilege and all that kind of stuff, it's like, I'm where I am because of a number of privileges that I've been afforded, so
definitely
trying to remember that kind of stuff and be less of an asshole, but so, anyways, moving on. Nikki's like, no, I'm not going to do that, but good for you.
An asshole.
I love it. So, all right,
let's start.
I mean, we're already been talking for a million years and I have like still so many more questions. So we might have to skip around, but I do want to dig into other topics that I'm obsessed with that you guys are also obsessed with. So,
all right, let's do it.
Conquering procrastination and fear. This is so huge. It's so central to, I think, both of our work. What was it that helped you really zero in on progress and moving forward as the drive behind, the Startist Society and community? It sounds like kind of bouncing off each other, but what else, what kind of got that motor going?
Definitely bouncing off each other for sure. I mean,
it might just be that. It's okay. It's just
I
that.
have no idea what else it is. No, I mean, there's lots of little tips and tricks, but the biggest thing is just acknowledging that, you can plan and procrastinate and come up with excuses forever, but you're never going to get anywhere if you don't just take a little step. So, little things like try to do one thing every day that, that advances your goals or gets you, like if you're having trouble even making anything, even drawing anything, do it for 5 minutes a day. Everybody can squeeze in 5 minutes a day, and don't worry about it being perfect. Don't worry about having to put it out there. But then another one of the great things that I think that we talk about all the time is, and I know you're doing some too, is creating challenges for yourself.
Yeah.
Committing to something publicly, like I'm going to do 30 days of whatever.
Yeah.
Even if it's just a little thing.
And committing to anything, like verbally, sort of saying it out loud, saying this is what my goal is. And, it could be, I'm going to, draw every day for 10 minutes and share the results, or I'm going to make 30 ugly pieces of art.
Yeah.
And I'm going to sit down and there's no expectation. It doesn't matter if it's totally, something that hits the delete button or hits the trash or whatever. I'm just going to let go of those expectations and just sit and create for creating's sake. And then probably what's going to end up is some of your most interesting work would probably come out of that exercise.
Because you've taken the pressure off yourself.
Yes.
Yeah. Even though some of it could be stuff that you never use, and that's totally fine, but you might have some diamonds in the rough there. So
there's plenty of things that we do that don't ever see the light of day.
That's true.
I love that. So I'm hearing two things there. And the first is like the accountability and because if we think about how we talk to ourselves in our internal monologue versus how we would talk to our friends and our colleagues and our business partners, they are so different. We're always so much more negative to ourselves and so much more, overthinking, judgmental, like all the things.
I would never say to either one of you or anyone I know half the jerky things I say to myself.
Yeah.
And I've admitted to being an asshole, but I say things to myself that I would never say to anybody else.
100%.
And why do we
having
do that?
Like voice of reason being the other person outside of yourself saying like, all right, you're going a little too, like, great job researching, but enough researching now for the next thing. And also having that different perspective of, different people have might be more fixated on certain things than other things. So if like me, I'm like, oh, I don't even care about that part of it, so let's move on. Whereas the other person is like, this is the most important part to me, you know? So,
well, also another thing for me is we've talked on the podcast a little bit about the Four Tendencies. Do you know about that? So it's like about how you respond to commitments. So I'm an obliger. Yeah, I'm an obliger.
Oh, okay.
So what that means is I am going to fulfill any commitment I make to somebody else, but not necessarily myself. So I know that about myself. So I will, like, if nobody gives me a deadline, it's never going to get done. So I will say, give me a deadline when you need something, or I will just publicly commit. I will say, okay, I am going to do this thing that has a deadline. And so I'm going to meet that deadline, where if I didn't have that, I would just procrastinate forever.
Right.
I think deadlines are huge. I think deadlines help so much, but for some people, they're extremely intimidating and make them shut down. For me, it helps me because it helps the overthinking, because I'm sitting there going, I'm just going to overthink everything. And we talked a little bit about that on the podcast, but like I had a deadline for a Skillshare class that needed to be completed, and it was an 11 p.m. deadline for the Teach Core. I finished at 10:55.
Mhm.
And look, because I was tweaking it right up to the
Yeah,
deadline.
yeah.
But so if I didn't have that deadline, I would have been tweaking it for another
Mhm.
2 weeks. And that,
Yep.
that's silly, right? So
Mhm.
learning what's good enough,
Yes.
is huge. And
Right.
saying that I'm just
Done
gonna
is better than
stop and-
perfect. It's one of my faves.
Yep. Yep. And it's really, really true,
Yes, it is.
and we both have a really hard time with that because we are perfectionists.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I don't think I overthink as much as Laura does, but I still don't want to put something out there that's
Yeah.
not perfect.
Of course.
So I have to fight that too.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. And the other thing that when you were talking about setting these challenges for yourself and stuff that I was hearing is something that I really love. The idea of something, I mean, not just creating a challenge for yourself, but creating something that's so low pressure in actually specifying make ugly art. I like that idea because that kind of goes with like rejection therapy, as I call it.
Yes.
Which is something that I'm into. It's like seeking out something that you're going to get rejected for, just to realize that it's not the end of the world.
It's not going to kill you.
Yeah,
a no
exactly.
is not going to kill you.
I talk about this a lot in my office hours of my class, and it's like, getting comfortable. Pitching feels scary. Pitching yourself, sending your artwork to an art director to try to get client work feels scary, feels hard, feels like, oh my God, what are they going to say? They're going to hate it. This is going to be horrible. So one suggestion that I've read and heard about that I really love is this guy. I don't even remember where exactly I heard this, but he was talking about how he would go in anytime he was in a store. When he was ringing up his whatever he picked out, he would ask for a 10% discount just out of nowhere, just like at the grocery store.
Was that John Acuff?
It might have been. I really don't remember.
I think it was the guy who wrote soundtracks.
Oh, I really don't know. It was just kind of, I don't remember. But
I think I heard that recently too. And I think it might've been him.
Okay. So there we go. We'll have to check into that. But yeah, he just would not expecting anything at all, totally knowing that why would they just give me 10% off just because I asked, just doing it to do it, knowing that it was going to get a no. But of course, once in a while, maybe he got a yes. Every now and then
you get a yes and you're like, oh, well.
Yeah. And then he was, more confident to ask for other things, knowing, when you're saying I'm trying to get a no, and then you get a little yes on the side, you're like, all right, okay. So that's a benefit, so.
You don't get what you don't ask for, which reminds me of one of my favorite books from one of my favorite people on the planet, Amanda Palmer. And she wrote The Art of Asking.
Okay.
And it started as a TED Talk. So she's a musician.
Okay.
And amazing. And it started as a TED Talk, and it was called The Art of Asking. And she has made her whole career just asking, it used to be when she was going from gig to gig, she would ask her small group of fans, do you have a couch I can sleep on? And she's turned that into a whole career of, not working with traditional record companies, just her fans pay, she supports herself on Patreon because she's not afraid to ask.
Yeah.
I love it.
And people want to support you. So people will help, but you don't get what you don't ask for.
And
exactly. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just saying I have my various catchphrases that not even catchphrases. They're like cliches, but they're ones that I absolutely love. And if you don't ask, the answer is always no is one of them. So that's exactly,
Well, cliches are,
for a reason.
Yeah.
And this doesn't apply to necessarily to Nikki and I in our situations, but I think you can look beyond just potential clients when you talk about this. What if you are in a situation where, you need to make a request of your husband or, your wife to say, hey, we don't have
husbands or wives.
I know. I said it doesn't apply to us.
Oh, right.
Oh, sure.
Nikki, silly one. So you can make a request to say, I need an hour a day to work on my art, and could you, buy the groceries today or do like whatever, take care of the kids or like whatever the situation is, because It might be being able to carve out time in your life to make a request of somebody, even if it's somebody that's part of your family, to support you in a certain way.
Yeah.
Does Gus give you permission to create for an hour a day?
He does.
That's her dog.
Does Rocket?
No, Rocket does not give me permission to do anything.
I love it. Yeah. You know what? I was in this like entrepreneurial membership with Rachel Rogers last year, and she's phenomenal.
Oh, wow.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
Y'all should follow her if you don't already. But one of the like, I don't know, like modules of her like course or of the membership was, bitch, you need boundaries. That was like the title. And then it was like, here's how to like, ask
what's a boundary?
Genuine. It's perfect, really. So that's
yeah.
I love that. All right. So observations. So mindset, obviously super important. My new thing is that your art career is your art, your marketing, and your mindset, and potentially like art might be the smallest of all those things. So mindset is it's super important, and the mindset is all this stuff that we've been talking about, is getting over that procrastination, is realizing you're overthinking things, all that kind of stuff. Any observations on how your mindsets have shifted as you've developed your careers? I mean, we have kind of been talking about this, but how has that impacted, as you've moved forward? Maybe like a lesson that you've learned from in-house work or from corporate work or whatever. We have talked a little bit, but do you have any examples of that?
Well, I mean, it's building your confidence muscle, really.
Yes.
That's the biggest thing, I think.
Yes.
It's just feeling like when we did our first episode, we were like, oh my gosh, we're doing our first episode. We were nervous. We were like, there was so like, and the very first time, so I do the audio editing, right? The first time I had to audio edit, which took forever. We're not going to go there, but took forever. And I was listening to our voices and cringing. I was just like, I don't think I can hit publish on this, because like, who wants to listen to these voices? It was like icky to me. And, we've just published our 52nd episode, which
thank you.
And now it's like, it's nothing. Like, you just get used to that because you've flexed that muscle 52 times. Right. And I think that happens to be a podcast example, but this goes with your artwork and submitting. It goes with just sitting down to make art that day. It's just flexing that muscle and getting into a routine and, learning to not be like, get past that fear, get past that stuck phase, and being able to see things a little bit differently over time.
Yeah. I mean, exactly that fear that you feel the first time or 2 times or 50 times of doing something is not going to kill you. And it's the only way to get over it is to just do it anyway. So the first time when I worked for IBM and the first time I had to present a design to some huge corporation, that was terrifying. And on the podcast, the first time that I interviewed somebody, I had never interviewed anybody before. And now I'm kicking myself for something I didn't do years ago. I had the chance to interview Suzanne Vega for a website that I used to run in my community. She was in town for a show. I had the chance to interview and I chickened out because I was like, I can't. So when we first did our first interview on the podcast, I was terrified. And then I started. Then I started doing it and I was like, oh my God, I love interviewing. Yes. But it would have been so easy to just stay in that fear and not do it. And then I would never know how much fun it is and that I'm pretty decent at it. And, so you just have to push yourself to take that first step. And then usually you'll find, oh, it wasn't that scary.
Yeah. And learning, and it's so great when you also have the opportunity to learn from that individual and like their expertise and they all say the same thing, they were all in that stage and we forget that, right? As people who are starting, you forget that everybody started somewhere. Everybody started with 0 followers. Everybody started with nothing in their portfolio, right?
Yeah.
Well, for example, do you remember the first interview you did with somebody? how
Yeah, I'm
you
trying to
felt
think.
the
Yeah,
first
I
time
mean,
you
so it
hit
kind of
bubble?
evolved a little bit more organically, I guess, because
Mhm.
what the first things that I started doing that I ended up that ended up being this series is interviewing or doing IG lives with
Mhm.
sort of like art friends, basically.
Mhm.
So there was a little bit,
Yeah,
it
we should
wasn't
do
so
that.
much of an like an interview format as there was a little bit of like some points we were going to hit and stuff, but
Yeah.
it was my friends, so it was sort of, it wasn't too, but and everything mostly everything I do, so much of it is pre-recorded. So, well, Instagram Live is not, but now that I'm on YouTube, this is
Mhm.
pre-recorded. So it's like, worst comes to worst, we just cut this. But I don't
Yeah.
do a lot. I don't do a lot of
Yeah.
editing, but like, if there is
Yeah.
some major crazy thing that I feel like
Right.
that was
Right.
uncomfortable. But
yeah, the point is you just have to take those first steps,
exactly.
and it's
yeah,
going to be scary, but once you do it, you're like, that
Yeah.
wasn't so
it's
bad.
not so bad. It's not so bad. Yeah.
That's how I felt the first time I got a tattoo. Also, I had it built in my head that it was going to be so painful that when I actually did it, I was like, oh, that's not nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Wait, how many do
Yeah.
you have now?
Just 4.
Okay.
Not too many. Yeah, I love that. All right, let's start to wrap it up with a couple more questions, but like
Okay.
maybe 1 to 2. What is one piece of advice you would give to artists who are feeling stuck and need a boost to get started or keep going? I know this is kind of what we've been talking about the whole time.
Yeah. I would say that you should listen to the Startist Society podcast.
Yes, definitely. Agree.
Because really, I mean, that's
talk about this all the time.
That's 50% of what we talk about, at least, is just getting started, and we give a lot of great practical advice about it.
Yeah.
And it's just take a little step, and then you'll feel like it's not that bad. Take another step.
Action brings clarity.
Yes, action brings clarity, and overthinking does not.
No.
Exactly. Yeah, it's super true.
It does not. It does not.
And it's those baby steps. It's those micro movements, and saying, this is the one thing I'm going to do today, and this is the next thing I'm going to do today, rather than thinking, oh my gosh, I have a laundry list of all the things that I need to do. It's just picking the one next step. And doing that one thing, and then the next day doing the next thing, and pretty soon you will have covered miles. You go from 1 podcast to 52 podcasts, right?
Yeah.
Or
yeah,
52
it's so true. I just recently interviewed Tammy Bennett, and she has a podcast, and she's like a life coach, but she used to have a stationery company, and her podcast is called the Show Up Society, which is basically same concept of the tiny, she has a project called Tiny Daily Habits, and it's just like do the little thing over and over again, and then it's which I love. And I think when I think about tiny daily habits and the small steps, it brings me to my 6-year-old, because if you have ever, overseen a child, if you've ever babysat a child at nighttime or whatever, and had to have them brush their teeth, it's like a 3-year-old brushing their teeth is like, this is the world's biggest torture. Like they feel like this is the worst thing. Why do I have to do this every day? Like, this is horrible. Let me just put it in my mouth and eat the toothpaste and then throw the toothbrush down. It is a hot mess. But
my nephews were so obsessed with toothbrushes. The trick is to just let them collect a million really cool toothbrushes, and then they look forward to it.
We have cool stuff and they don't care. They're still like, they'll take it and they just like, they want to play with it, but then they don't want to actually brush with it. And it's but anyways,
same.
It's getting better. He's 6 now, and he mostly does not argue. And sometimes I do have to say like, okay, brush a little bit longer. That was like 3 seconds. Come on. But
maybe show him a video of like a dental procedure. Maybe that would work.
Like, that's an idea. I like that. But the point is that that's something that had to be built up over time, and theoretically, when he's my age, he will not be crying and fussing about brushing his teeth. So
That's why they start with baby teeth that fall out.
yeah, exactly. They get a do-over.
You do. You get a do-over. Hopefully by the time you have your real.
So it's like building up what is the thing in your life that feels like a 4-year-old brushing their teeth, and it's so hard that someday is going to be second nature. And for you, you're saying interviewing was like, oh my God. And now it's like, oh yeah, it's super easy.
Yeah. Now
and
it's
I don't,
fun.
the same thing. I don't really, I prepare because I think of questions, but then like, it's not like, I feel like, some of the first recordings I did, I was like, a half hour before, I'm like all, up, setting up lighting, doing this thing. Now I'm like, all right, here, what are we talking about today? So
it turns out it's a lot easier to plan an episode when you're interviewing someone than when it's just instructional.
Exactly. Yeah, I know. I've been leaning hard on in interviews because it's easy to just kind of go with it. And it's also, I love to connect with people. So I feel bad about, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just saying my YouTube channel used to have more instructional stuff, and I feel like I should offer more and get back to that, but that's not really what I want to do right now. So
Well, I was going to say that for me, it was like editing videos. So I started in the last year doing online, kind of shifting things online. And that was so tough for me at first, all the fancy things with video and Premiere Pro. And it was like, the B-roll and the text popping up on the screen and this and that, like all, the camera angles and the equipment and the microphone and and now it's like, it's so much, it's easy to a degree. I mean, it's still hard to do and it takes a lot of time, but like, I'm not intimidated by what I have to do now. And that's something that a year ago, I was like, oh, I don't even know how I'm going to do this. So
also there are so many courses out there. There's Skillshare classes on things, and there's your class. I mean, there's so many great resources. All of us are a little bit older than a lot of people who are just getting started right now, especially me, some of us more than others.
She acts like she's like 105, which is, she's only 99. So let's not judge.
Okay. What day is today? Today's Friday. In 1 week, I will be 54.
Ooh, which you would never know this. This is
you,
like shocking,
because I'm very immature.
News.
But what my point about that was that when we were getting started, there were not all these resources.
Yes.
We couldn't look things up on the internet. There was no internet when we were getting started. We had to figure things out on our own or try to contact people that it was impossible to get contact info for, or look things up in books.
Do you remember encyclopedias?
I do. Yeah.
No.
So I mean, the resources are endless these days.
I know, which is good and bad, right?
It's good. Yes.
Because then that gets you into the overthinking, over researching, over whatever. But it does, what I say about my course, for example, is like when I was doing all this stuff, there weren't these type of resources. Me getting into my freelance career was only 10 years ago. So there was the internet, but it was, not specific to service pattern design. So I'm looking up how to do, like blog posts, how to like format my website, like how to make small HTML changes, because at first my website was on HTML, how to, like do a newsletter, all the things, plus actually doing them. Like, now, what am I going to write in my newsletter? What am I going to write on my webpage? What am I going to, like, what's the best portfolio pieces to put up, all that stuff. And I was adapting, like, because the information about marketing and stuff was not for surface pattern design. It was for whatever. So I'm taking that, I have to like, synthesize it in my brain of like, okay, how can I make this work for what I'm doing? Then I have to do it. Now it's like, at least, in my course and others, you have to find the right course, and that, that's its own thing. But once you find it, like in my course, it's like, here's the step-by-step. You still have to do the stuff, like not, whatever, that's still on you. You still have to write your about page, and you still have to pick out your portfolio pieces and whatever, but you don't have to like figure out how to do all the stuff, because it's right there in the video.
Right.
And it's in one place. Like, I love it when it's not like you're going searching 50 million YouTube episodes or, YouTube videos to try to find all of it and piece it together. Somebody that you click with and you learn from differently, because that's another thing I've noticed is that with different teachers, like they could have a similar message, but you just don't get it from one, and you get it from the other teacher when they say it a certain way.
Yeah.
And so just finding the person that you can really learn from the best.
Well, and it's so much easier to find opportunities. So many places that list jobs or calls for submission. I mean, my first gallery show and my first illustration job, the t-shirts that I talked about, I found from classified ads in the actual printed newspaper.
Okay, now you do sound 99 years old.
See, that was, I mean, yeah, that was.
At least I was up on Craigslist for mine.
Craigslist didn't exist when I got my first gallery show in Atlanta in 1989 or 90. There was no internet. Or not accessible to us.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I know. I'm teasing, but
it's true.
How we did stuff. Yeah. I mean, the graphic market or whatever, there's that book that has like lists, it's like published and it has lists of people and stuff. And that's how things were done back then. So, so we have a lot of opportunity in front of us. Obviously, funneling curating that can be difficult, but we do live in the information age. So
so it's all out there, but don't let that freeze you up. Just pick the next step and do something.
Yes, please.
Anything you choose is going to be better than not doing anything at all.
Yes, agreed. All right, ladies. Well, I love this. We are definitely putting the podcast information in the description below. I'll put all your websites, but is there anything else that you want the people to know? How can they support you besides the podcast, besides going to your websites? Anything coming up that you want to talk about or?
Well, we'd love, okay. We have lots of things coming up that we're not quite ready to talk about, but we are here in this is our second planning retreat. We did one at our 6-month mark, and we planned the next 6 months. But this time we're planning the next year of podcast stuff, but we're also planning some other really exciting things that we're going to do that are beyond just the podcast, but we're not ready to say.
But stay tuned.
But stay tuned.
Follow you guys on Instagram, right?
Yes, follow us on Instagram at Startist Society, but also join our Facebook group. It's also Startist Society on Facebook. Yeah, and say hello and tell us what you're working on and.
Yeah, we would just love for you to be a part of the community, and we can all be accountable to each other and, help support each other through this whole process. And you can also find us at startistsociety.com is our website, and all of our past episodes and show notes are out there as well. And your interview. And
a great interview with Elizabeth.
Yes.
Where you basically asked me the same questions because we're on the same wavelength of
Pretty much.
So how do you get started? How do you move past procrastination?
Yeah. Well, you know what? Sometimes you have to hear things multiple times.
You sure do.
In different ways from different people before it clicks. So
So if you're feeling fired up from this interview, go listen to that podcast and then get it again so that you're really, really ready. All right. Thank you so much, ladies. It's been wonderful. And I'm so excited for what's coming in 2022 for you guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Silver, and I've been a professional surface pattern designer for almost 2 decades. When I left my in-house design job to run my own business, I had a lot of industry experience, but building a strong client base still took way longer than I expected. And part of that was because there's both a lot and not enough information out there about how to do this. You've been down the Google rabbit hole, you know. Fast forward to now when I sometimes turn down client work because I'm booked solid. It's for that exact reason that I created Start Your Surface Pattern Business. In this course, I help you cut through the overwhelm and give you a super clear path to becoming a paid surface pattern designer. I provide you with the tools you need to focus on your goals, get yourself set up so you make a killer first impression, and then find and pitch the clients that are right for your artwork. And I do it in the most straightforward, simple way possible. Nothing extra, just distraction-free lessons and to-do lists, plus insights from an industry insider that will help you get the confidence you need to move forward. The most exciting thing is hearing from my students about landing their first client or licensing contract as they start taking the proactive approach that I am such a fan of. You don't need to spend years building a portfolio of hundreds of patterns and illustrations, and you don't need to get stuck comparing yourself to artists on Instagram. What you need is to take concrete steps forward to build the career that you want. And Start Your Surface Pattern business is all about taking imperfect action. If you've got a portfolio of designs that you've been building and you're ready to level up, enroll to get started today. Thanks so much for watching my video. Be sure to subscribe and share with your surface pattern design friends.